No one came to my book club. I read the book anyway. This is not for inspiration. We look at why this book exists, how it unfolds, and what it leaves behind. Let us begin. The Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God. My limbs fail and my mouth becomes dry. My body trembles and my hair stands on end. The bow slips from my hand and my skin burns. I am unable to stand. I see no good in killing my own kinsmen in battle. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 1, verses 29 through 31. On the plain of Kurukshetra, the warrior Arjuna asks his charioteer to drive him to the center of the battlefield. He wanted to see the enemy. Instead, he sees his uncles, his teachers, his cousins, his own blood, arrayed against him. And the infrastructure of his world falls apart. The code of the warrior, the duty to fight, collides with the love for his family. He does not want victory if it costs him everything he knows. He turns to his charioteer, Krishna, and says, "I will not fight." And in that refusal, the Gita begins. What follows is a 700-verse dismantling of Arjuna's reality and a reconstruction of the soul's true architecture. The Song of God is sung from a stalled chariot in the space between two armies, at the moment before the first arrow has been let loose. The world that demanded this book was one of profound transition, composed over centuries, crystallizing in the form we know it between the 5th and 2nd centuries before the Common Era. The Gita is not a sudden revelation. It draws together Vedic ritual, Upanishadic philosophy, and the hard dharma of a warrior society. The old certainties were breaking. The great epic, the Mahabharata, of which the Gita is a small but brilliant part, is a story of cosmic conflict, of cousins who cannot share a kingdom, of a world so corrupt that a war of annihilation becomes inevitable. The problem the Gita is trying to solve is the paralysis of the human soul when dharma, duty, righteousness, the very order of things, splinters into 1,000 contradictions. Arjuna is not just sad. He is a philosophical crisis made flesh. He is the man who knows too much. He knows that killing his elders is a sin. He knows that abandoning his duty as a warrior is a sin. Every path forward is stained. The unresolved human problem here is simple and absolute. When action itself is a wound, how do you act? What is breaking is the idea that the world is just. Arjuna stands at the edge and looks into the abyss. Earlier traditions offered two stark paths: the way of the householder, engaged with the world, and the way of renunciation, where one withdraws to the forest to seek the eternal self. Arjuna is trapped in the middle. He is a householder by birth, a warrior by caste, but his mind has fled to the forest of grief, seeking peace. The Gita was born to forge a third path, not a compromise but a bridge. It emerges from the pressure of a culture that could no longer pretend the world of action and the world of spirit were separate. It was forged in the cold of this crisis. The text moves with the logic of a master teacher. It is a dialogue, a verse structure of 700 lines divided into 18 chapters. Classical commentators saw a 3-part structure, 3 books of 6 chapters each. The first 6 chapters address the problem of action, karma yoga. The second delves into the nature of wisdom and reality, jnana yoga. The third rises to the path of devotion, bhakti yoga. The movement is not linear, but layered, each circle of teaching deepening the last, pulling Arjuna and the reader further inward. It begins where all crises begin, with the body. Arjuna weeps for bodies he believes will die. Krishna's first move is to shatter this foundation. He speaks of the self, the eternal, indestructible self. Weapons do not cut it. Fire does not burn it. Water does not wet it. Wind does not dry it. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 23 and 24. The Bhagavad Gita presents this not as a consolation, but as a statement about what is real. He is telling Arjuna, what you mourn is a coat the self has worn. The battle is not the end. It is a changing of clothes. The disruption is reframed. The problem is not death, but attachment to the temporary. From this deeper ground, Krishna introduces the engine of the Gita, Karma Yoga, the yoga of action. He gives Arjuna the formula that will echo through millennia. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 47. It is the command to act with your whole being, but to sever the nerve that ties your peace to the outcome. Action performed without clinging to success or failure, performed as an offering, doesn't bind you. It becomes yoga, skill in action. As the dialogue deepens, Krishna moves from the how of action to the wisdom that must ground it. This is Jnana Yoga. He reveals that the true sage sees with equal eye a learned Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and an outcast. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, verse 18. The wise see the same self in all. This knowledge is not academic. It is the perception of unity beneath the chaos of the world. The structure of the text allows Arjuna, the warrior, to become a philosopher. And then the teaching pivots to its final, culminating movement, Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion. Krishna reveals that all paths, action and wisdom, ultimately lead to and are perfected by love for the divine. In Gita, Krishna is not just a teacher in the chariot. He is the sovereign of the universe, and the highest truth is to surrender to him, to make every act an act of worship. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me, he says in the final chapter. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66. The central conflict of Arjuna's soul, action versus renunciation, is resolved not by choosing one, but by turning action into devotion. The warrior's duty becomes an act of love. This is the arc, from the grief of a limited self, through the discipline of action, to the illumination of wisdom, and finally, to the peace of complete surrender. But the Gita is not a simple text. It carries immense weight, and under that weight, strains appear. The most persistent tension lies in its core command, to act without desire for the fruit of action. Is such action even possible? Is a warrior who fights without anger, without enmity, without desire for victory, still a warrior? The text assumes a reality where the self is eternally free, untouched by action. And yet, it spends 18 chapters convincing someone to act. If the self is already free, why does the struggle matter? On one side is the metaphysical claim of absolute unity. All is one self, all is Brahman. On the other is the ethical command of absolute duty. Fight this war, uphold your dharma. If all is one, why does it matter who wins the war? The Gita's answer: because this is your role, and it must be performed as an offering, is powerful, but it does not dissolve the paradox. It holds it in suspension. The warrior must act in the world of duality, armed with the knowledge of non-duality. This is the strain the book asks its followers to bear. This strain reaches its breaking point in chapter 11. Arjuna, unable to fully grasp the teachings, demands to see Krishna's true form. And Krishna grants his wish. He reveals the Vishvarupa, his cosmic body, without limit, without end. Arjuna sees all the gods, all beings, all of existence, pouring into the gaping mouths of this form. He sees his beloved kinsman on the opposing side rush into those mouths and be crushed. And Krishna says, "Time I am, destroyer of the worlds, and I have come to engage all people." Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, verse 32. The loving friend, the gentle charioteer, is also the all-devouring void. Here, the philosophy of non-attachment meets the terrifying reality of the universe's indifference. The ethical teacher reveals himself as the machinery of annihilation, and Arjuna, trembling, begs him to return to his gentle form. The tension is not resolved. It is witnessed. For centuries, the Gita lived within the vast body of the Mahabharata, a jewel in a crown. But it was the philosophers of the Vedanta school who began to lift it out, to polish it, to make it the central text it is today. In the early medieval period, Shankara wrote his commentary, reading the Gita through the lens of Advaita, or non-dualism. For him, the ultimate truth was the oneness of the individual soul and Brahman. A few centuries later, Ramanuja offered his qualified non-dualism, arguing for a loving relationship between the soul and a personal God. Then came Madhva, whose philosophy saw an eternal, real distinction between the soul and the divine. The Gita proved broad enough to hold them all. The Gita's long journey to the West began in 1785, when Charles Wilkins published the first English translation. It was a political act as much as a literary one. The Governor-General of Bengal, Warren Hastings, saw the translation of Indian texts as a tool for colonial understanding, but the text escaped its colonial frame. It landed on the desks of the Romantics and the Transcendentalists. It spoke to those who felt the limits of their own tradition. To a West gripped by industrialization and doubt, the Gita offered something else, a vast, ancient, and unapologetically spiritual landscape. Its most infamous echo in the modern world came not from a sage, but from a physicist. In July 1945, as the first atomic bomb blazed in the New Mexico desert, its creator, J. Robert Oppenheimer, recalled a line from the Gita. He later said the verse came into his mind, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." He was quoting Krishna, revealing his cosmic form as the destroyer of all things. In that moment, the ancient text became the language for the modern world's most terrible power. The Song of God became the anthem of the atomic age. But another legacy endures, equally powerful. Mahatma Gandhi called the Gita his spiritual dictionary. He found in it not a justification for violence, but a way of reading it as the inner battle against evil. For Gandhi, the battlefield was the human soul, and the war was the struggle against the lower self. He read it as a treatise on non-attachment, on selfless action, on the courage to stand for truth non-violently. The book remains the same. The reader changes, and each era finds its own reflection in its depths. The Gita begins with a refusal. It ends with a choice, not whether to fight or how to fight, but to act from the ground of being itself. The teaching does not erase the tragedy of Kurukshetra. The cousins will still die. The grief will still come. But for Arjuna, the actor has been transformed. He is no longer the anxious self, clinging to results. He is an instrument of a larger order, a participant in a drama he does not fully control. The chariot is still stalled between two armies, but the man in it is free. Krishna's final instruction to Arjuna is simple. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. For some, this is devotion to a personal God. For others, it is something more interior, the surrender of the ego into ultimate reality itself. We leave Arjuna exactly where we found him, on the thin line between two armies. The external world hasn't changed. The kinsmen are still arrayed, the sun is still high, and the tragedy is still written in the stars. Arjuna now acts, not because he knows less, but because he has stopped needing to know. He is a participant, a witness who also fights. By returning to the moment the bow was dropped, we see that the Gita's true miracle isn't the ending of a physical war, but the ending of the conflict within. The dry mouth finds its breath. The trembling hands find their grip. The collapse has been replaced by a quiet, steady resolve. The bow is lifted, the first arrow waits, and the song of God, which began in refusal, ends in the only place it could. Here, now, act, and the Mahabharata goes on as it must.